Right, so that's enough from me. I'll now to hand the next 15 minutes over to Neville Guthrie, a life member of the club and a man who has put pen to paper on more than one occasion. He has had his books, short stories published, and so was the best person to write the publication on behalf of the club. Neville.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked to tell you a bit about the club's history and our anniversary book. First of all, I'd like to dispel a bit of a fallacy. Just because somebody might be a year or two older than some other members doesn't mean they know everything about the club. I joined this club in 1987. Not because I wanted to go tramping. I've been doing that on and off for the previous 40 years. But we had a bit of a problem at home. We had a 14-year-old boy who wanted to buy a motorbike. So to offer a bit of distraction, I took him along to a tramping club meeting. Well, met a few old friends and a few faces that I see here this evening, and we signed up for a family membership and put our names down for a tramp the following weekend. And it just sort of snowballed from there. Within 6 months, that 14-year-old had climbed to the peak of more than 6 1,500 metre plus peaks, travelled a lot of riverbeds and glaciers, and done a lot of rock climbing and besides. And then they had an AGM and put him on the committee. And you know, I'd never heard another mention about motorbikes.
I've got one now, Dad.
Yeah, I didn't have much say in that one. But he achieved all this with the help of a lot of helpful and encouraging club members, particularly trip leaders in those early years. People I recall from that time were included my old scoutmaster, Neville Bonington, Max DeLacy, Philip Brownie, Brian Williams, Rob Moffat, Dawn McAteer, Steve Tully, Robert Burks, Nigel Davey and Grant Piper, among a lot of others. One of the great strengths of this club has been its trip leaders. Committee members from the very start became trip leaders virtually from day one, and some have some astonishing records. We have a gentleman here tonight who's been in the club for more than 45 years, and he has led at least 116 trips. Robert Burks. Then we have a lady who's only been in the club just over 22 years. And she has to her credit 80 plus trip leaders jobs. Catherine Thomas. Our third most prolific trip leader has been Steve Tully, with 58 trips on his officially 21 years. I suspect it could have been a bit more than that, because I know his father, Greg Tully, was at the first meeting. I went to see him a while back and asked him about a few things about the early days of the club. He says, "Oh, I don't remember anything about that." He said, "I only went there to get the kids interested." So Steve's name started appearing as a trip leader a couple of years after that. Another impressive record is our fourth most prolific trip leader, Judy Blakemore. 44 trips over the last 15 years. There have been other tramping clubs in Timaru, but their records are sparse. I belonged once to a dancing club here in the 1950s, and one evening the teacher came along, bubbling with enthusiasm about the fantastic weekend she'd spent at Mount Cook. The previous year, the Hermitage had burned down. The building contractors had gone up there to build a new one. But the first thing they had to do was build some temporary accommodation for the workers on the new Hermitage. So they built this big long hut with about 18 rooms, 4 bunks to a room for the workers. Once the hotel was built, of course, that hut became surplus to requirements. So it was taken over by the newly formed Youth Hostels Association. And our teacher had heard their call for volunteers to go up and improve the old hut so it could become a youth hostel. And she was so enthusiastic about this wonderful day at Mount Cook, or 2 days up there, that she got everybody in the club really keen to go. And then somebody looked up the rules and said, "You've got to be a financial member to be able to stay there." So everybody was a bit disappointed about that. And then someone looked at the fine print and said that each member was entitled to take 1 guest. So 17 of us immediately volunteered to join the Youth Hostel Association, so the whole 30 of us could go. So we hired a bus and off we went. My first ever trip to Mount Cook was a wonderful weekend, bright sunny days, great company, terrific time. Now, each trip up to Mount Cook, a group of us would usually manage to do a bit of a tramp somewhere in the national park. On the weekends we didn't go to Mount Cook, we went to the usual Timaru Youth Hostels, a social evening on Friday nights. And it wasn't long before the question was asked, how come the only people to get on tramping trips are those that go to Mount Cook? Why can't we have tramping trips from here? So we organised some tramping trips from the Timaru Youth Hostel. It got to the stage where people would arrive on Friday night with a plan for a trip on the following Sunday. And some of them were accepted and followed. Some people even turned up at 8 AM on Sunday morning just in case there was a tramping trip going somewhere. One Friday evening, in about 1963, the physical education instructor from the Timaru Technical College arrived at our social evening with a sack full of blackened billies, tin plates and hammer mugs and bent and buckled cutlery. And he said, "This used to belong to the Tramping Club, but they're not there anymore." I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, the problem was that half the Tramping Club married the other half, and that was the end of the Tramping Club." So we made use of their leftovers at the youth hostel. I was actually actively involved in trips from the youth hostel for about 8 years. And then there was a marriage and house building and babies, and it got in the way. I've been a member of the